Good morning, everybody. I have a lot of material to go through today. I tried to squeeze in as many projects that went on in the Yukon as I could. So I'm going to run through it fairly quickly, and hopefully I'm not too much over the time that's allowed. So starting with the summary of this year's activity, 2022 activity normalized somewhat following the pandemic. However, there were a few headwinds this year. As many of you noticed, there was a shortage of workers, rising labor costs, high fuel prices, supply chain issues, and very tough financial markets. In fact, a few companies had very difficult times raising funds necessary to execute their programs this year. The good news was that metal prices were generally strong, although they did weaken towards the end of the summer. And there were a number of very significant updates to projects and new discoveries in the Yukon. I will mention that we're still kind of in the early stage for assay results. There's lots coming in. Many of the projects I talk about, results are still pending, but I would encourage you to look at their websites and see their press releases through the winter as those results come in. So I'll move on to the exploration and production statistics. Starting with exploration dollars, these are what the YGS estimates will be the total expenditures on exploration by the end of December. So we're looking at probably about $124 million this year. On top of that, there'll be about $64 million in development activities. And then production from the 3 operating mines, one for only half of the year, will be about $543 million. So that's a total contribution of $731 million to the Yukon's GDP. The exploration dollars will be split. About 61% of those exploration dollars will go to gold. 14 or almost 15% will focus on copper, primarily copper projects. 13.6% will focus on primary lead zinc projects. About 8% to silver. We had a couple of nickel platinum group element projects going in the Kluane area. They'll contribute about $2 million. And then 1 tungsten and 1 rare earth element project for about $200,000. Claim staking activity for this year, these numbers are as of November the 1st. As of November 1st, there were 6,245 claims staked, and already that's twice what was staked the year previous. Claims in good standing will be 164,972, and that's down about 8,000 from 2021. That staking activity was, the majority of that was focused in the Mayo district. And most of that activity was focused around Snowline's new discovery on their valley target. Next largest amount was in in the Whitehorse area, and that was kind of scattered throughout all of the Whitehorse district. That followed by Dawson, and most of that staking in Dawson was in the Clear Creek area. And there were a few claims staked in the Watson Lake district, 17 claims staked there. Another statistic I looked at while I was preparing this presentation was the number of active exploration projects and the number of active companies and prospectors working in the territory. The 2022 numbers won't be final until about a year from now, once we receive all our assessment reports and YMEP reports and so on. But right now it's looking a bit low. If you compare what we see in this graph to the one that had the dollars being spent, what I interpret that to mean is that there are a small number of projects that are spending lots of money. And there aren't very many earlier stage grassroots projects. If the numbers of projects do not, or the number of companies and prospectors active do not increase significantly before this time next year, we could be looking at a 57-year low in activity. To me, my concern about that is that the Yukon prospector could be an endangered species. My concern is its habitat is shrinking and getting very fractured. So, but the good news about that is we do have the mineral exploration program. Funding, as John mentioned, he was a little bit off, but it's $1.4 million this year, and that leveraged about $4.5 million in total exploration dollars. That went to 41 projects. 18 of those are placer, 2 are grassroots hard rock, 6 are focused regional, and 15 are target evaluation. The nice thing about where that money goes is the majority of that stays in the Yukon. Since the program has been operating in one form or another since 1986. Prior to that, from 62 to 85, there was a Prospectors Assistance Program. For every $1 that the government puts into the YMEP program, companies, individuals contribute about $2.6. And that money, 79% of that stays in the Yukon. About 52% goes to contractors, so that would be drilling, earthworks, camp services, expediting, air charters, that kind of thing. 19% goes to wages for Yukoners, and 8% goes to suppliers, groceries, fuel, lumber, hardware, that kind of thing. And the nice thing about those wages, 71% of the workers on YMIP projects are Yukoners. And these statistics came out of a survey that we started last year. It's the final submission form that recipients will fill out. So we'll increase the statistics on that going forward. And then the real benefit of YMIP is when a discovery is made. So I looked at the coffee project, all of the YMIP grants that went into that project over the years, even before Sean Ryan made the original discovery. So back into the 80s, there was some YMIP money in and around the coffee area. Total YMIP contribution there was $155,000. To date, there's been over $400,000, or $400 million, dollars spent on that project. If you look at the white gold area, the white gold district, where the ARC and forget the other deposit there, but there was $115,000 of YMIP money, and they spent over $53 million on that. And Ormac, fairly recent discovery. Through the years, there's $145,000 of YMIP money and over $41 million spent on that project. So once a discovery comes out of the YMIP program, the benefits economically are uncomparable. I'll now move to mine production, starting with the Eagle Gold Mine. It's a reduced intrusion-related gold system. The proven and probable reserve number I have here is a little bit old. I'm sure they probably have an updated number, but their 9-month production for this year is 106,000 ounces of gold, and that compares to 114 last year. So a little bit down. That's primarily because they had a conveyor splice failure on September 29th, but by October 17th, they'd had that repaired and were back up and operating. Revised guidance for this year is 165,000 ounces, which will put them basically on par with what they had last year. Vic Gold also did a deep drilling program on the margins of the pit. They focused on expansion to the west and at depth. They drilled 23 holes for over 10,000 meters. The average depth of those holes was 450 meters, and they added approximately 500 meters of mineralized strike length. I've got a couple of highlighted holes here, and I'll just point to perhaps the third one down, 1.1 grams over 72 meters in hole 1017. Vic Gold also did some exploration activity again this year on their Raven project, which is a short distance east of the mine. They did announce in September a maiden resource there at 20 million tons of 1.67 grams for just over 1 million ounces of gold. That occurrence is hosted in a dilational fracture zone within the Nugget stock, and that stock intrudes the Ern Group shales and Keno Hill quartzite. The gold there occurs as arsenopyrite dominant polymetallic veins. And Steve Wozniak of Vic Gold will be presenting the theory to resource for Raven, and that's today at 1:20 over at the Sternmüller. Now moving down to the Minto mine, resource update from March of last year shows a little over 20 million tons of very good copper grade. Of course, there's gold and silver there too. Production numbers this year, they produced 22 million pounds of copper, 8,000 or almost 9,000 ounces of gold, and 103,000 ounces of silver. So that's a very significant increase. You can see the percentage increase on the bottom there. Their copper production was up 30%. Gold was up 26%, and silver up 18% from 2021 numbers. Minto also did an exploration program this year. They drilled approximately 30,000 meters, and that was distributed between Minto North, Copperkill South, Ridge Top, and a new near-surface target. And here are some of the results from that. You can see they're getting over 2%, or yes, in some cases over 2% over significant widths, and very nice numbers scattered throughout. So hopefully there's still many more years of mining to be conducted there. Keno Hill mine site, of course, in June, Alexco announced a temporary suspension of production and milling to allow them to get sufficient number of development headings in preparation, so they had a difficult time maximizing the mill capacity, so they wanted to get that up to 400 tons per day. And their plan at that time was to do all of the development for the remainder of this year and get back into production early in the new year. Up to that point, they had produced 190,000 ounces of silver, 312,000 pounds of lead, and 532,000 pounds of zinc. And then on September 7th, Hecla announced the completion of the acquisition of Alexco. To my understanding, Hecla is sticking to the plan to restart production in the new year. We'll now move on to projects that are in the permitting and development stage. Started with the Katsakaya project of BMC Minerals, almost 20 million tons there with very good zinc, lead, copper, gold, and silver grades. On June 20th, the Yukon and Canadian governments issued a positive decision in relation to the YESUB recommendation for that project to proceed. However, the Kaska Nation is challenging that decision in court, citing a lack of consultation. So hopefully we'll see that resolved fairly soon. Just a reminder of the numbers there. This is from their feasibility study in November 20th, so perhaps there's some updated needed. But the capital costs for that project were $376 million, and they were looking at a 9-year mine life. The coffee project over in southwestern or western Yukon, Newmont Corporation, the reserves from 2020, 2.3 million ounces of gold contained there. The territorial and federal government signed off on the YESUB recommendation for this project to go ahead. And that sign-off was this spring, and Newmont has indicated that they would bring the mine into production at some point in the future. And there'll be a presentation on their exploration activity from this year. Jacob Kitchen is going to present a new geologic mapping, provides new insights into the structural setting and deformation history, and that's at 2:40 today at Sternwheeler. And a short distance away is Casino, very large, of course, porphyry, copper, gold, molybdenum, and silver project. The company filed an updated feasibility study on the project in August of this year, and they've engaged YESUB to restart the panel review process. YESUB is revising the environmental and socioeconomic statement guidelines on the project, and hopefully that panel review will start before too long. And lastly, on the permitting and development projects at Brewery Creek, Sabre Gold is the new operator there. They entered a pre-submission engagement with YESUB in August of this year. The company envisions a 9,000 ton per day operation and a 9-year mine life. And they'll be using heap leach technology, and the resource, as you see there, shows just under 1 million ounces of leachable material and just under 1 million ounces of sulfide bearing material. We'll now look at exploration targets, starting with gold. There were 31 projects that we're following. Here, this map shows where they're scattered. I'll start with Banyan Gold's Ormac project. They had a very busy season drilling this year. They finished on November 5th. By that point, they had drilled 221 holes for over 50,000 meters. They announced a new resource from their last year's drilling in May, just shy of 4 million ounces, all in the inferred category. So a reminder, that doesn't include all of this year's drilling. So hopefully we'll see some more good numbers coming out of them. There's lots of results yet to come. They've had very few reported so far, but I'll just show 2 here, one at Powerline. They had 1.8 grams per ton gold over 31 meters, and at Oryx Hill, 1.13 over 84 meters. And James Tom will be presenting the geochemical and structural insights from the Ormac project, and that'll be today at 2:20 at the Sternwheeler. Banyan also worked their Nitra project, a short distance to the west. This was a YMEP-funded project. They got funding from YMEP in 2020, 21, and 22. The map you see on the left is a compilation of all of the previous programs. This year they collected another 5,500 soil samples, did LIDAR and airborne geophysics, and that's one where the results are pending. Now looking at Snowline Gold's Rogue property, which has Valley and Gracie targets. They drilled 5 holes on Gracie for 2,200 meters and 27 at Valley for 1,330. I don't know if you guys have seen their press releases and the pictures of their core. We had a tour out there early in the summer, and it's pretty spectacular. I was very impressed. Some of the best core I've seen. Of course, at that time, we didn't know what the gold numbers were going to be, and they came back spectacular. I'll go through all 3 of the highlights down below. They're starting to release some of their numbers. There's still many more to come. But in hole 7, they got 1.89 grams over 410 meters. Hole 10, they got 2.55 grams over 318 meters. And in hole 14, 1.45 over 285 meters. And their project geologist, Sergio Gamono, will be presenting today at 1:40 over at the Sternwheeler. Snowline also worked a number of other properties scattered throughout the territory. Very busy this year. They worked the Einerson, Ursa, Cynthia, Cliff, Tosh, and Rainbow, doing a variety of studies on each of those, and the results from that work is pending. Over in the Clear Creek area, Sitka Gold was busy again drilling on their RC property. It's an intrusion-related gold system and Cretaceous Mayo-Sweet intrusions. They drilled 16 holes for 5,250 meters in the Blackjack zone. And here are some of the results from that. They got 0.9 grams over 146 meters in the upper hole, 0.65 over 116 in the intermediate hole, and then 0.51 over 69 meters in the lower hole. And Mike Berkey will be presenting on that project today at 2 o'clock. We'll now move over to the Rackla Belt. Attack Resources was busy drilling in their Osiris project again this year. They drilled 5 holes for 1,500 and some meters. 3 of the holes were at Osiris and 1 at each of the Sunrise and Conrad zones. They also provided an updated resource estimate from in July of this year. They're getting pretty close to 2 million ounces on that project. And this section just shows some of the intercepts from this year and the orientation of the mineralization at Osiris. Over to the Dawson area, just outside of town in Dawson, Klondike Gold's Corp's Klondike property. They just last week announced a maiden resource estimate for that deposit at just over, well, almost 600,000 ounces of gold there. They drilled 47 holes for 6,000 meters. The drilling was primarily in the Stander zone and Gay Gulch, but they also drilled a few regional targets. And there'll be a presentation on this project by Nicole Eriks tomorrow at 2. For a little bit further south of Dawson, the White Gold project, White Gold Corp's project. They were drilling at Ryan Surprise and Uli's Ridge. They had planned 2,700 meters there, and they also did some diamond drilling and RC drilling at the Betty property. This core image is some of the brecciated mineralization on Betty. Results from all of that drilling is still pending. Over in the Nansen area, Rockhaven Resources was busy again this year at the Claza project, a substantial drill program there. They drilled 69 holes for over 12,000 meters, and that was distributed as 43 holes for further definition of resources, 8 holes for resource expansion potential, 2 holes for evaluation of outside targets, and then 16 holes for geotechnical purposes. They're also conducting metallurgical studies on over 1,000 kilograms of core and continuing environmental studies on a quarterly basis. And results from all that drilling are pending, but Matt's going to be presenting on this project tomorrow at 2:20 at the Sternwheeler. South of Whitehorse, Whitehorse Gold Corp at the Skookum Gold Project. They provided a mineral resource update just a few months ago. They didn't do any field work this year. Their sole activity was doing the update, and they're just shy of 1 million ounces of gold and 11 million ounces of silver from the 3 deposits on that project. And then way down in southeast Yukon, Seabridge Gold on the 3 Aces project, orogenic gold system. They received their Class 4 permit late in the season, and once they got that, they had planned to drill 1,800 meters, so they might still be out there drilling now, and results from all that work, of course, are pending. We'll now look at silver, lead, and zinc projects, 12 of those that we're following. Starting with Fireweed Zinc's Mac Pass project, they drilled 32 holes for 7,000 meters. 17 of those were in the Boundary Main Zone, 6 were at Boundary West, 8 holes at Tom West, and 1 at Tom East. They also did 11,000 meters of core scanning using the Enersoft Geologic AI core scanning system with state-of-the-art XRF and hyperspectral sensors. Highlights from the drilling at Boundary, the step-out drilling there, analytical results are still pending, but the step-out drilling has extended the area of mineralization. New discoveries of massive sulfide and laminated stratiform mineralization have been observed, and they intersected sphalerite veins and vein breccias in multiple holes. And Jack Milton will be presenting on that project tomorrow at 2:40 at the Sternwheeler. Moving back to the north, Cantex Mine Development, their North Rackla project. It's a silver, lead, zinc carbonate replacement occurrence. They drilled 54 diamond drill holes as of September 26th. They then took a break, and I believe they went back in. I believe they're still out there. Their drilling was testing the main zone and GZ zone, main to the north, GZ to the south. And here's a schematic section showing the orientation of the body that they're testing on the main zone. And a couple of highlight holes. One from the main zone had 12% combined lead zinc and 37 grams per ton silver over 7 meters. And from the GZ, 39% combined lead zinc and 116 grams per ton silver over 5 meters. Metallic Minerals, Keno Silver Project, they had planned 3,000 meters of diamond drilling. They were focusing on a resource definition at the Formo and Caribou deposits and a recent discovery at the Red Fox target. They also planned geophysical surveys, soil, and LiDAR surveys. Taylor Hayde will be presenting on this project tomorrow at 1:20. Short distance away, a little outside of Keno to the west, Alianza Minerals on Mount Haldane. They've got silver, lead, zinc veins, similar to the Keno operation. They did a late season trenching, prospecting, and rock sampling program there, and those results are pending. And going back to the southern Yukon, CMC Metals was busy at Silverheart. We had a tour there earlier in the summer, and it was very interesting. They had a couple of Mexican geologists there who really knew manto deposits, and they taught me a few things. They had planned 5,000 meters of drilling. They also did trenching, soil sampling, and rock sampling, and the results from that are pending. Now looking at copper projects, starting with Granite Creek Copper at the Carmax Copper Project, they had a smaller program this year, high resolution, deep penetrating IP survey. They were targeting the 3 gaps that you see on this map, and the results from that work are pending, but Jacob Lomgridge will be presenting tomorrow at 3:30 at the Sternwheeler. Attack Resources also worked their Connaught property west of Dawson near the Alaska border. They had planned 5,000 meters of reverse circulation drilling, and results from that work are pending. Attack was also working a newly optioned property not very far outside of Whitehorse called the Catch. They optioned it earlier this year and conducted a phase 1 program of prospecting, soil sampling, and an IP survey. And the results were so encouraged that that prompted them to immediately initiate an RC drilling program. And I should mention this was another YMEP-funded project. The highlights from the first phase were copper and soil anomaly that measures 5 kilometers by 500 meters. Grab samples returning up to 1.5% copper, as well as over 1% copper and 1 gram gold, and 0.7 copper and 2.82 grams gold. They also did the IP survey returned an anomaly that measures 1 kilometer by 600 meters by 400 meters. And Adam Coulter will be presenting on this tomorrow at 11:50. Early summer program, CAVU Energy Metals did some drilling at the Hopper property. They drilled 8 holes for 2,555 meters. And then later in the summer, they signed a definitive agreement with Alpha Copper, whereby Alpha will acquire the company, all the company's shares, and that's due to close sometime soon, Q4 this year. Some results from that drilling at the Copper Castle Skarn, 2.8% copper over 15.27 meters, and at the Porphyry 0.16 copper over 300 meters. Strategic Metals, as is typical, we're busy on a number of properties this year. I'm only highlighting 3 of them right now, 3 of their porphyry copper properties. At the Mint project near the Alaska border, they did IP. At the Alada project, a short distance south of Casino, they also did IP surveys. And at CD, they did helicopter-borne magnetic and radiometric survey. And results from all 3 of these are pending. Project we haven't heard very much about for a number of years is the Marg deposit. Azarga Metals optioned this property from Golden Predator in November of last year. An older resource estimate you can see on the top. They are just shy of 10 million tons with very good copper, lead, and zinc numbers there, as well as the gold and silver. They conducted a deep penetrating IP survey this year, and results from that work are pending. And then just last week, a new deal was announced. The Whitehorse Copper Belt claims the Coin and Sons were optioned by Gladiator Metals Corp. They haven't done any work on the project this year, to my knowledge. But interesting stats about Whitehorse Copper. The earliest production was recorded in 1902. The last significant production was from 1967 to 1982. In total, the belt produced 268 million pounds of copper, 225,000 ounces of gold, and 2.8 million ounces of silver. But there's still significant potential in the belt. Some recent drilling there by the Coins at Cowley Park, they got 3.71% copper over 24 meters in a 2019 drill hole. And then at North Star, they got 4.95% copper over 14.6 meters. Now we'll look at nickel, copper, PG, and tungsten and rare earth element projects. The tungsten project was MacTung, which Fireweed Zinc recently took on. They were compiling all of the historic data and verifying some of what was observable on surface. It's a very, very small program there. The two magmatic nickel, copper, cobalt projects down in the Kewaunee Ultramafic Belt, Catalyst North project, a small program there, YMEP funded, and then at Nicholshaw. I'll talk a little bit more about Nicholshaw shortly. And then the one rare earth element project was down at the Bandito in southeast Yukon. At Nicholshaw and Nickel Creek Platinum, they drilled 18 holes for 3,300 meters. 8 of those holes were to convert inferred resources to indicated, and 10 of the holes were at the arch target, where last year they were getting very good results, and results from that work are pending. I'll finish off with just letting you know about a few projects that we're working on in the Minerals Geology group. One of the projects that we started earlier this year was we were prodded to take on after seeing a presentation that the BC Geological Survey gave a few years ago where they were extracting surface source sediment geochemical data out of assessment reports. And I was very impressed. I decided that maybe we should copy what they've done. So we're doing the same. And Yuri Kliukin is leading that project for us. And we'll extract soil, streamsed, rock, vegetation, and water samples out of the assessment reports. The newer reports are easier than the older reports, so we're starting with the low-hanging fruit. We've got 280 reports done to date and over 300,000 samples. So you can look for that data. We haven't figured out what kind of database structure we're going to do yet. It probably won't be very different from what they did in BC, but you can look for that data hopefully before too long. And Yuri will be presenting on his work tomorrow at 9:40 at the Sternwheeler. Another project we're working on, some of you may have seen some of Warwick Bullen's presentations on mineral potential mapping and mineral and machine learning. He's taken that a step further, and he's using the random forest method of machine learning and looked at the whole of the Yukon to see if he could identify projects with porphyry potential. And he'll be presenting that work tomorrow at 10:40. And Patrick Sack and Tyler Ambrose. The title, Patrick is going to give a presentation tomorrow, and the title of that is Where is All the Metal From? Introducing two relatively new or updated isotope compilations for Yukon. The historic data that we had, most of it dated from 1988. It was a Godwin publication that had 377 lead isotope analyses. Patrick and Tyler researched the literature and have identified 1,187 lead isotope analyses in the Yukon, as well as 1,247 sulfur isotope analyses in the Yukon. They've compiled all of that data, as well as data from Alaska and BC, into the database. And the idea there is if we have the lead isotope ratios of an ore body, and we have lead isotope ratios of potential source rocks for the ore body, we can follow that path back to see where the source of the metals are. They've also got a number of samples in for analysis, so we'll be updating and increasing that database over the years. And Patrick will be presenting on that work tomorrow at 11:10. And lastly, scanning of the core in the core library. This project was a partnership between Scale AI, which is the Canadian Artificial Intelligence Supercluster, Enersoft Inc., which runs the geologic AI system, Fireweed Zinc, and us at the survey. We scanned 83 drill holes that are in the core library, and that represented 1,335 boxes, or 5,200 meters. That geologic AI system scans for LiDAR, XRF, high-res photos, and hyperspectral data, and products from this will be available hopefully early in the new year. They're working on processing all of that. And Dave Henderson of Geologic AI will be presenting that technology tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And that is everything. Thank you very much.